We're about to follow a digital trail left behind in one of the most haunting mysteries of our time. Today, we're going to break down the forensic data recovered from the phones of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon.
Imagine this, in the middle of the dense Panamanian jungle, with no one else around to see what's happening, two smartphones are keeping a silent, incredibly detailed log of the final days of their owners. Today, we're going to make them talk.
Okay, so at the heart of this entire investigation, you've got two key pieces of evidence: Kris Kremers' iPhone 4 and Lisanne Froon's Samsung Galaxy. And really, the data that was pulled from these phones is the only voice we have from their final days.
Right, so before we dive into the data, we have to remember the context, right? On April 1st, 2014, Kris and Lisanne went for a hike on the El Pianista Trail and were just never seen alive again.
It's weeks later when a local woman finds their backpack, and inside, almost miraculously, were their phones. Forensic teams managed to extract the data, and what they found created this chilling 11-day timeline of what happened after they vanished. And that timeline, that's where our story really begins.
Okay, so first things first, let's look at the undisputed facts, the raw data that was pulled by the Netherlands Forensic Institute, or the NFI. This is the what happened before we get into any kind of interpretation.
So, this 11-day period, it really has a few key moments that stand out. You see, the first few days, there are these attempts to call for help. But then, on April 5th, something changes dramatically. After the 6th, the phone goes completely silent for 5 full days, and then there's this one last, really strange burst of activity. And this is that dramatic change I was talking about. The NFI report is crystal clear on this. Up until the morning of April 5th, every single time the iPhone was turned on, someone entered the correct SIM pin. But from that afternoon on, the correct pin was never entered again, not even once.
And, without that correct pin, this SIM-locked message is all you would see. The phone it can't connect to a cellular network. It makes any attempt to find a signal totally pointless.
The second really big anomaly is the pattern of how the phones were used. I mean, they weren't just left on to search for a signal. Instead, they were turned on for these really brief, sporadic moments over many days. You can see it right here in the chart, these bursts of activity, and then long periods of absolutely nothing. And when I say brief, I mean really brief. The NFI logs show the phone was often powered on for less than 2 minutes. I mean, that's just long enough for the system to boot up and then it's immediately shut down again. This is such a crucial detail to remember. So after that last brief power on April 6th, the iPhone just goes completely dark. For 5 full days, there is zero activity. This long silence is honestly one of the most puzzling parts of this whole timeline.
And then, after 5 days of total silence, the phone is turned on and it stays on for 65 minutes. This is completely different from all those short power-ups we saw before. So of course, the huge question is, what on earth happened during that hour? Well, what the NFI data shows is just bizarre. There wasn't any attempt to make an emergency call. No apps were opened, like the camera or contacts. Instead, the phone's file system shows that system files were being created and modified. And then, after those 65 minutes, it was deliberately, manually powered off.
Okay. So we have the official data, right? The what? But what does it all mean? To try and understand the possibilities, we're going to turn to the work of an independent forensic analyst, Jan B., who really dug deep into the technical side of these NFI reports.
So, the first big question the expert analysis tackles is this one: why? Why were the power-ons so short? I mean, if your goal is to find a signal because you're lost, this behavior just makes no sense at all. And here's the technical problem. Jan B's analysis shows that Kris's specific model, the iPhone 4, needed about 1 minute and 40 seconds just to fully boot up and start its internal systems. Actually, searching for a signal would take even longer. So, what does that mean? It means those brief power-ons they were technically useless for making a call. Okay, so what about that final 65-minute session then? The NFI found those system file changes, but there were no detailed power logs showing exactly what was done. So how could an hour of activity leave almost no trace? Well, Jan B points to this known quirk in iOS 7, something he calls the RAM/NAND bug. Basically, think of it like this. The phone records what you're doing in its temporary memory. That's the RAM.
But those logs only get saved permanently to the phone's main storage, the NAND, after you enter the main passcode to unlock the screen. So here's the crucial part of that. If someone used the phone for an hour, but never actually unlocked the main screen, and then just powered it off, all the detailed logs from that session would simply vanish. They'd be gone. This could totally explain the missing evidence from April 11th.
But there is a second, even more technical possibility. It's called DFU mode. This is a deep system-level state that you can use to connect a phone to a computer. What's important here is that it allows access to the file system without a passcode. Any actions taken in this mode could create or modify files while leaving very, very few traces behind.
So, where does all of this leave us? The forensic data gives us this incredible sequence of events, a what, but it leaves behind these profound, massive questions about the who and the why.
Look, the facts are clear. We know the phones were used, we know when they were used, and we know how they were used. But we don't know who was pressing the buttons after those first few days. We have no idea why the correct PIN was suddenly no longer entered. And we don't know the purpose of these really strange actions. It's like the data trail goes cold right where the human stories should be picking up.
And all of this leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? Does this strange pattern of phone usage point to two lost hikers desperately trying to survive, trying to conserve power in a way they didn't realize was useless? Or do the abrupt changes, the technical oddities, and that final mysterious hour point to someone else being in control of the phones? The digital witnesses have given their testimony, but in the end, it only makes the mystery deeper.